Hello, everyone, and welcome to Part 7 of Using the Power Platform to Extend Finance and Operations App series, where today's topic is Power Apps Portals. My name is Evan, and I'll be your moderator today. We are broadcasting this web conference through Teams live events, and the audio can be heard through your device speakers. Today's web conference is being recorded on behalf of the Microsoft Corporation, and by participating in the session using Microsoft Teams, your name, email address, phone number, and/or title may be viewable by other session participants. If you do not consent to being a part of a recorded session, please disconnect at this time. The recording will be available on the TechTalks Community Dynamics page within 5 business days. If you have questions for the presenters or need support, please use the Q&A panel located on the right side of your screen. Our presenters will be responding to your questions throughout the event. Finally, closed captions are available in Spanish, French, German, Italian, Chinese, and Russian today. To turn on closed captioning, click the CC button located on the lower right-hand corner of your screen, and to change languages, click the gear icon and make your choice. Thank you for your patience during these announcements. Now let's get started. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Rachel Profitt, Senior Program Manager, and Vasavi Setty, Senior Program Manager. Rachel, over to you.
Thanks, Evan, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm super excited for part 7. It says 6 on the slide, but it is actually part 7 of the series. Let's just kind of dive in and take a look at what we're going to be talking about today. Again, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Rachel Profitt. My contact information is up here on the slide. I invite you to follow me on Twitter, connect with me on LinkedIn, or check out my blog at dynamics365lady.com. Also joining me today, I have Vasavi. Vasavi, do you want to go ahead and do a quick introduction of yourself?
Yes, sure, Rachel. Hi, everyone. I'm Vasavi Setty. I'm a senior program manager on the PowerCat team. We are the customer advisory team for all of Power Platform. I don't use Twitter more frequently, but I do have my LinkedIn account here. Definitely reach out to me and connect with me. Happy to engage more. Thank you.
Thanks, Vasavi. So in today's Tech Talk, we are going to be focusing in on 4 key objectives. We're going to start off by describing use cases for Power Apps portals with finance and operations apps. And then we'll be demonstrating an example of Power Apps portals that integrate with your finance and operations data. And we've actually got a few examples that we're going to be demonstrating and showing today. And we're also going to be taking a look and talking about some of the do's and don'ts for designing portals that use your finance and operations apps data. A few things to note that we won't be covering in today's session are detailed licensing and authentication aspects of portals. We also won't be talking about the Canvas apps or model-driven apps portions of Power Apps. If you are interested in those, I do invite you to go check out parts 5 and part 6. Those recordings are available on the Tech Talk page. Also, we won't be diving into the detailed aspects of dual write, data integrator, or virtual entities, although some of those technologies are being used, and I'll talk a little bit about it. If you're looking for more information about dual write, data integrator, or virtual entities, I encourage you to check out our Tech Talk page where we've got links and additional resources available out there specific to each of these features. So with that, let's take a look at the agenda. The way we're breaking it down today is starting off with use cases, and then I'm going to hand it over to Vasavi, and she's going to walk us through how to get started with your Power Apps portals. I'm going to talk a little bit about the employee self-service portal and some features and things that you can do with that. And then we're going to do 2 demos. The first demo will be of a customer portal, and then a sample using the manufacturing industry accelerator. You might have seen some sneak peeks of that and portions of that accelerator in part 6 when we talked about model-driven apps. Then we will do some do's and don'ts and provide you with a checklist and resources for getting started with your Power Apps portals journey. So with that, let's just go ahead and dive right in. Starting out with the use cases for Power Apps portals. Now, when I think about Power Apps portals, or when you think about Power Apps portals, one key thing to remember or keep in mind is that it's really designed for your external audiences. So there's kind of 3 key pillars that I've divided the use cases up into. The first pillar here is for customers. Obviously, those customers are people that you're kind of selling your services to or your products to. These could be customers that are more of a business-to-business relationship or B2B, or a business to consumer relationship, B2C. And you might use Power Apps portals in these scenarios for a variety of different reasons. So one example is for a B2B portal. When you're doing business with another business, there's oftentimes contracts, terms, other types of information that you need to exchange with that customer. And using a portal to do that is an excellent way to interact with your customers. Some types of functionality that you might include in a customer portal is the ability to create orders or look up orders or the status of orders. You might also include detailed product information out on your portal as another example. In our second pillar, we've got employee portals. So employees are an example where oftentimes they are maybe not users that are external to your organization, but you might have some workers in your organization that are external. So for example, you might have some contractors or affiliates that are not direct employees of your organization. But you might also want to use an employee portal as a kind of dashboard or place for your workforce to go to get some basic information about the company pulse, what's happening on social media. It could be another landing page to get a variety of information about company and various employee resources. You might also use it as a way for people to request system help or resources that are related to HR or IT resources. Again, like I said, they don't necessarily have to be people that are external to your organization, but they may not be people that have access to your Dynamics 365 applications or F&O, for example. And the last pillar is the vendor or supplier portal. So when you're working with your vendors and your suppliers out there, there's oftentimes a lot of ways that you can collaborate with your vendors or information, again, that you need to gather. So some examples of things that you might include on a vendor or supplier portal, a kind of an application or onboarding process for your vendors. You might also include some EDI configuration, give your vendors a way to understand how to communicate with you if they want to do EDI transactions with your organization. You might also have a pricing and product portal where they can upload products. You could have requests for quotation, bidding, a way for your vendors to submit invoices, and so on. We do have a few links here on the bottom. The two portals that I will be demonstrating today are based off of samples that are available that you can download and install. The first one is the customer portal for Dynamics 365 supply chain management, and the second one is the manufacturing industry accelerator. So thinking about getting started with your Power Apps portals, there are a number of steps that you'll need to kind of go through in order to start working with Power Apps portals. And I'll be handing it over to Vasavi here in just a minute to kind of walk through some of this in more detail with you. So each of the steps here has a hyperlink, and the deck will be available with the recording of this on the TechTalk page. So I encourage you to download that and check out these resources. But, the first thing you're going to need to do is provision a portal. And there are some slight variations to how you might provision a portal. We'll kind of walk through the basic steps, but depending on if you're using a portal with Dynamics 365 or as a standalone portal built on the Common Data Service, there are some slight variations in those steps. And so this link takes you to a page where you can see and get all those additional details. Once you have a portal, you're going to want to start creating web pages. Obviously, those web pages are where you're going to surface out all the different content. The next step is to create pages and web templates. So page templates and web templates are used to kind of create a consistent look and feel throughout your website. There are a variety of page templates and web templates that are provided with the sample portals, but you can always modify those or create your own page and web templates. The next step is to create web files and your content snippets. These are the different components that are going to go into those individual pages that you're creating throughout your website. When you want to surface data from Dynamics 365 finance and operations or other data sources, or have a way for your external users to interact with you and save that data, we create entity lists and entity forms. These two concepts are very similar to the model-driven app concepts, but we'll be diving into kind of what's special and different from a Power Apps portal perspective for you as well. And then the last step here is really important to remember that you're going to need to configure security. So we've got a link here. When you're creating new portals, making sure that you've got the right security access, determining what's going to be public, what requires a user to sign in, and once you're signed in, what information or details the user is allowed to see will be critical as well. We've got some links on the right-hand side to some learning paths where you can learn more and get started with your journey. So one thing that's important to note when you're going to use Power Apps portals with your finance and operations apps is you're going to need to define kind of how that data is going to get into your portal. So there are 4 basic ways. We talked about this in our last session as well, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but there are 4 basic ways that we can orchestrate the data in between your portal in the Common Data Service and your finance and operations apps. So dual write is, one of those options. That's the synchronous option where we, copy the data into the CDS, and it's, near real time and bidirectional. The next option is the data integrator, which is asynchronous, and it happens in one direction. And then we also have virtual entities, which is the new player in the game, which does allow us to surface any of our F&O data that's in a public data entity out into the Common Data Service. And we do support those CRUD operations, create, read, update, and delete. The other way is that you can use Power Automate or something like Logic Apps as another example to orchestrate data and business processes between any one of the 400+ connectors that are available out of the box and your Common Data Service and Finance and Operations apps. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Vasavi, who's going to talk a little bit more about portals and then walk through that process of creating portals.
Thank you, Rachel. Sorry. I thought we can talk a little bit and give a quick overview of what Power Apps Portals is. So Portals is basically a low-code solution that helps you create multilingual responsive websites, both for your internal employees as well as external users, that is users outside of your organization. So for Portals, you can use any of the commercial or enterprise login providers, including Microsoft account, such as LinkedIn account, Azure AD B2C, and many more, as well as you can even allow anonymous access for your portals. You can leverage the Portal Studio, which has the WYSIWYG designer, which you can use to go create website content, and you can bring in data from Dynamics, or that is your Common Data Service data, using some of the familiar constructs like the forms, views, chats, dashboards, which you might already be familiar from the model-driven app session previously. Portals, again, does have a ProDev extensibility element, and there are existing templating capabilities in case you want to go design some complex business processes. And some of these templates, like Rachel mentioned, we'll be covering them in the next couple of slides, in a few slides later. As well as, like we spoke about some pre-built templates, we have the customer self-service template, template for partner management or event management. Then there is a community self-service template, or you can always go start from a blank portal. So Portals, again, supports about 43 base Common Data Service languages. This does exclude the RTL languages, and Portals, again, has language variations like, say, English US, English UK, French Canadian, and so on. Moving on. Rachel, can you move to the next slide, please? Perfect. Thank you. So how do we go and provision a portal, right? This is very simple. You can go into the Power Apps Maker portal. On the left menu, you can simply click Create and select the portal from blank. Once you have those options and you can provide, this dialog opens up for you where you can provide the name, a quick URL, the language your portal should be in, and click on create to go back and start the portal provisioning process. So this portal provisioning process itself takes about 20 to 30 minutes. After that's completed, you will be notified and you can see this portal appear in the list of apps with the app type as portal. You can see it on the screenshot up here. So you can, from this portal app from this portal app, basically what you can do is you'll be able to go edit your portal in the Portal Studio. You can browse it, you can share it with your end users, you can go to the settings, you can delete it, or you can view some other details about the portal. Also, like Rachel mentioned, you note that a portal that is published from an environment with Dynamics 365 for apps will be different from the portal that you publish for an environment which does not have Dynamics 365 for apps. You will notice the different in the following slide, where I have a small video, and in that case, I've published that environment from an environment. I've published the portal from an environment which does not have Dynamics 365 for apps. Moving on to the next slide. Okay, so once you have your portal provisioned, you would want to go in and create web pages. So again, you can open up your Power Apps Maker portal. If you click on apps on the left-hand side, and you can select the portal that's already created, and you can say edit. So once that portal loads up in your Portal Studio, on the top left, you can go and say create a new page on your command bar and select a page layout. You can pick a page layout. I've just selected a page with title. And once you have that on the right side on the properties pane, you can go in and enter some details about your, like the page name, what's going to be the partial URL for the page. And if you click outside, that portal will get saved automatically. At this point, you can click on the Browse website on the top right to go see the portal web page that you've just created. Additionally, you can add several components to this web page. You can add static components such as text, images, or iframe. You can embed Power BI reports. You can add model-driven app entity forms, entity lists, and so on. So in this, we are just adding some static components. Like basically, we just went into the components on the left tool belt, where you can insert a 2-column section onto this web page. And on the left side, you can insert a text and type in the text that you want. And on the right side, you can insert an image component and just select a pre-existing image. So at this point, you have your web page with some static components in it, and quickly go browse the web page. Okay, moving on. So yeah, now that you do have your web page, next you might want to go modify the navigation within these web pages, or like you want to provide easy access to some of the frequently used web pages. You can do this using web link sets from the Portal Management app. So again, you go to the Maker portal, you see the Portal Management app there. You open up this Portal Management app, so find the web link sets section in there. So here we'll be editing the secondary navigation, which is an existing web link set. Once you open the secondary navigation, you will open the links tab. And in this step, we'll be adding some links to both pre-existing portal pages. We have existing portal pages for product A and product B. So what we're doing is we are just creating new links to these existing web pages and associating that with the web link set. And also we are adding a web link for an external page, say a Microsoft site. Here, you can just add this web link in here, save this, and close your Portal Management app. Again, going back, you'll go into your Maker portal, find your portal application that's deployed, open it up in the Portal Studio. Here, we're going to do some repeat steps where basically in order to add those navigation links, we are creating a web page, calling that a navigation page, the same way we added a new web page before. On the right-hand side, just enter some properties for your web page. Okay, and once you have that, you can go add in again a 2-column section into this. On the left side, select the left part of the column section. You can click on the source code editor at the bottom. And here we'll be copying the code that's on the slide here. So it's nothing but a simple liquid language tag, which will help you display the web links on the web page. We are connecting the liquid using the liquid tag to the web link sets that we created before. So you saw that as soon as we changed the code and saved it, the web links started showing up on the web page, and we were able to browse it and click on each of those web link pages. And each web link page, if it was an internal one, it was showing up on the same portal, the Microsoft site. They take you to an external page. Okay, with that, moving on. So the forms and views construct is something you might already be familiar from the previous model-driven app session, where you were using forms to, either create new CDS records, view existing records, or even go back and edit the data. So the steps are very easy. As you see, you can go into the Maker portal, select the Data Entities tab, click on the Forms tab, and you can add a new form and bring in the fields that you want to be displayed on your form layout. And then you just save and publish this particular form. Moving on, similarly, we have the views using which you can see the list of records from an entity within Common Data Service. Again, we are not going to go into too much details in here. You can go into the data tab, entities, views. Similarly, you will add a view and you can bring in all the columns that you want to show on that particular view. You can create multiple views as needed, switch between views inside of your model-driven app. So once you have this, you basically just save, publish, and your view will be ready. Moving on. So we spoke about forms and views. Portals leverages something called as entity forms and entity lists. So entity form and entity lists and portals basically use the model-driven app forms and views to help create dynamic portal pages that will let you interact with the data inside of Common Data Service. So entity lists, so again, from your Maker portal, you will come in, open your Portal Studio, and in the Portal Studio, under the left tab and on the components, you will go insert a form. So we did that step already. And as you see, you can create a new entity form, choose a name, choose the entity that you want to interact with from the portal page. We picked Contoso session here. And then, yeah, you basically select options like whether you want to create, edit, read, what all you want to be able to do with this particular form. And you can save it and browse it. And here is the form that we are seeing on the portal page, where a person coming in can start entering the session details and submit that particular record, which goes and sits inside of Common Data Service. Similarly, moving on, entity lists will let you define how the list of CDS records is displayed on portal pages. Along with the entity like views that you see on model-driven apps, this does include some additional functionality like filtering and sorting. So again, here we'll go insert a list from the components. On the right-hand side, you'll be creating a new entity list. I'm entering a new name called All Sessions List. For my list name, I'm selecting the entity here, which is Session Contoso. And I'll be picking a view that I created previously called Active Sessions. And from this view, I want to be able to give options where I should be able to go create a new record. I can, if I select on an existing record, I should be able to view more details about that record or edit an existing record. I'm not going to choose delete. So once all these options are given, again, I can click Browse Website from a Portal Studio, which will play my portal application. And you will see here that a view that basically lists all active sessions is displayed inside of my portals page. And I can click on create, which opens up a form that lets me, enter data and create a new session. So this, again, here I've leveraged the form that I have previously created. And again, I can click on an existing record, view the details, and so on. Right? This is how basically we are bringing in the CDS data into portals and giving ability for end users to view this data. Okay, moving on. So we spoke about entity lists and entity forms. Now we are moving on to web forms. So with the entity forms feature, the one important thing to note. So actually, just before getting here, one important point about entity lists and entity forms, the Portal Studio does provide some basic user interface for you to go create and configure entity lists and entity forms. But if there is anything advanced that you want to configure, everything cannot be done from the Portal Studio. So you will have to open up the Portal Management app, which does come as part of the Portal provisioning process. Which is a model-driven app which has a lot of components in it, which you can leverage to, like we did, we created web link sets. So there is like a list of web pages. Everything that you can configure from the Portal Studio, you can do it from the Portal Management app. Only some elements you're able to do from the Portal Studio. That's an important point to consider. So moving on. Like we discussed with entity forms feature, you can access individual records within a portal. However, there might be some scenarios where you will require some common data service records that are either too complex to present on a single page, or you might have data requirements that include multiple common data service entities. So you can look at web forms. Basically, they're a gathering guide. It'll help you go through a set of steps in a process. And also it includes conditional logic steps. So as you see here, you can have like some next and previous buttons on your web form. You can have a progress bar indicating the progress of completion of your overall process. You can have subgrids, and you can add like related record information for your entities. You can add customizations, or you can even go add logic using JavaScript. So for your web forms, right? Like consider some scenarios, say where you want to go capture, say feedback from customers, like when you want to do a survey, or consider situations like an onboarding situation where there are multiple steps involved. You might want to go upload multiple files. There are complex entities. There are different stages throughout the process. And how do you go interact across all those entities, right? It's not going to be easier with just your entity forms in such scenarios. So in those cases, web forms might be helpful to consider. So we are not going to go deeper. I have not put a video together here for web forms. So if you are interested further in web forms, I have provided some links at the bottom of the screen. You can leverage the MS Learn sessions or the documentation. There is also a quick video, so definitely consider. Again, if you have just looked at the Portal Studio, you might not find a way to go create these web forms. These can only be configured using the Portal Management app and not in the Portal Studio. So yeah, with that, I think I'll hand it over back to Rachel.
Thanks so much, Vasavi. So we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about the employee self-service portal. So the employee self-service portal is one of the portal templates that's available with Power Apps portals. And when we think about Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations or Dynamics 365 Human Resources applications, we've got extensive functionality from a human capital management standpoint. And all of those related modules and entities and data can be exposed via the virtual entities feature out into the employee self-service sample portal that's available. The sample portal that's available just connects to common data service entities, but you can extend that and bring your finance and operations or human resources data into that portal. And so all of that functionality spans a wide variety of things like profile management for employees with administrative details like office details, car details for parking, and so on. There's also functionality available in finance and operation like leave request management and time and expense or clock in, clock out type functionality could be added to a self-service portal. Other information like benefits and payroll, compensation, I-9, W-4, pay slips, all these types of things can also be integrated in. If you are working with a learning management system, for example, you could integrate in your corporate training and that data and give people a one-stop shop, if you will, for all of the things that they might do related to human resources. And whether you're just displaying data for users to see that comes from finance and operations or human resources, or giving them the ability to edit and interact with that data, those virtual entities do support the CRUD operations, and by starting from the employee self-service portal template, that'll give you a great kickstart to using that. I don't have a demo today for the employee self-service portal, but we are going to be looking at some other examples, and the same principles apply. These are just some of the things that you can do with the employee self-service portal. So with that, we're going to switch gears and actually take a look at the customer self-service portal. But before we dive in and we actually start taking a look at a demonstration, I want to talk a little bit about the capabilities of the customer portals. So in my demonstration, I'll be leveraging portal capabilities and showcasing a couple different scenarios related to customers within your finance and operations application. So from an account and user management capability standpoint, the ability to onboard your customers and their organization users and define administrative users for the organization is part of the functionality that's included. You also have the ability to for an administrator user to onboard other members to their organization, and for customers to manage their profile information like addresses, email, and phone numbers. There's also capabilities out of the box for trading partners to manage payment methods used by their organizations, and kind of who's allowed to kind of do those different things. From a catalogs and product management standpoint and pricing, customers can browse product from your catalog that are specifically set up for that particular customer. And customers can view their previous quotes, orders, view their open orders, and track the status of their open orders. And these orders could be recurring orders, and they also have the ability to see the inventory availability information. In terms of account balances and payments, customers can view their previous orders, account statements, and settle invoices with payments. Customers also have the ability to initiate a return or an RMA for orders that they're not happy with, and they can look up the status of previously returned orders and see the refund status on the same order. Customers can browse knowledge articles that have been specifically set up for them that come from the customer engagement side of the application, and customers can view a history of existing cases or create new cases. And they can resolve their queries or get answers to questions that they might have by using a chatbot. And what I'm going to be showing in the demonstration is kind of 3 samples of the chatbot. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and switch over to the demo. So in this first example, we are actually using the omni-channel for customer service base portal that is Contoso Coffee built on Power Apps portals. And what you're seeing here is, and on the site, you can see at the bottom, there's the Let's Chat widget. And you'll notice that that kind of persists throughout the different pages in this particular site. This is just the sample site that is available with the omni-channel for customer service. And you'll notice if you click on it, it opens up, and once an agent is kind of connected, it'll populate. You can see that information, and then you can start interacting with that. So that process looks the same no matter which kind of page from the application you do that from. In order to embed this chatbot into the portal, what we have to do is go into the omni-channel administration page, and you can see we're on the chat page, and there's a widget snippet code that we copied, right? So from omni-channel, we copy that widget snippet on the chat page, and then we go over to the portal management app. And here we go into the website and choose the content snippet that we want to edit. And so in this case, we're finding the chat widget code, and we're updating that with the chat widget that we copied and pasted from the omni-channel for customer service. And that's what makes that kind of be embedded. So in the next example, we are going to be taking a look at how we can use Power Virtual Agents chat and put that kind of chat widget into a Power Apps portal. So here you can see it looks a little bit different, and you do have the ability to control the appearance and what it looks like. So in this example, this is a Power Apps portal. In this case, this is the supply chain management customer portal that we provide. And you can see out on the docs site, there's some instructions on how to do this. And what we're doing is we're going into the portal management under content snippets and selecting our site. In our case, we chose the footer to embed this. And if we scroll down, you'll see down here the URL that's being used for the chat widget. And you can also see some of that code that controls the appearance. So what we do is from the Power Virtual Agents, we copy and paste the actual code to be used for this. And in this case, we're going to embed it into a page. So this will embed it more like an iframe. So in this third example, same Power Apps portal, we saw it on the footer. And now we're going to embed it into a page as an iframe. So we're copying and pasting that link in. You can adjust the size of it. So it's just a new page, just like Vasavi showed earlier. Adjust the size. Obviously, there's a lot of other properties. If you want to kind of edit this in a more developer experience and have more control over the appearance, you can edit the code. And then once we browse that website, you'll be able to see that the chatbot is actually embedded right into the page rather than being kind of a pop-up thing that shows up on the footer. So you can see it's still on the footer because it's the same site, but in this case, we embedded it right into the page as an iframe element. So those are just a few ways. And in this case, we're using chatbots, but obviously it kind of shows you a little bit about how you can embed snippets and use snippets throughout the system. We're going to be diving into more detail in our next session on how to actually create these chat bots from scratch and kind of control the experience inside of those bots. So I do invite you to join us on that next session, where we'll dive into that aspect of things a little bit more. But on this, we're just kind of showing you how you can embed that into your portal. All right, so on our next example, kind of switching gears a little bit, we're going to talk about the Manufacturing Industry Accelerator. So I did some examples and demonstrations in our previous session with the model-driven app. So I'm again using the same Manufacturing Industry Accelerator. That accelerator comes with a model-driven app, a number of Power Automate flows, and a Power Apps portal as well. So in the previous demonstration, I created entities, views, and forms. So I'm not going to be recreating them. They're the same entities that you saw me create in the previous session. So if you're interested in how to create those entities and views, I encourage you to go watch part 6. And enabling those virtual entities and updating the views and forms. And kind of the last step of that process is to create the web pages. So that's primarily what I'm going to be showing today. I do create a new main form in the demonstration to show you how you can kind of create that form and then go add it into your web page. So the components of the solution, in my demonstration, I'm only showing the vendor bank account entity, but you just repeat the steps to do that for the vendor invoice. If you want to see how I created the vendor invoice on part 6, the previous session, I encourage you to do that. So with that, I'm going to switch over to the demo and walk you through how this works. So I'm here in the Power Apps Maker Studio, and if we click on Data and then Tables, you might notice that it's been recently renamed from Entities. I'm going to search for that vendor bank account entity. This is the entity we created in the last session, and there are already a number of views and forms, but I'm going to go ahead and add a new main form. And when I create this main form, it by default puts a lot of stuff in here. I'm going to give it a new name. So this is my bank account details portal, so I know that it's for the portal. And then I kind of start getting rid of some of the stuff that I don't want to display on the portal. So maybe I don't want the timeline, I don't want the status, I don't want the owner. So I hide a couple of fields in here, simplify it a little bit so that my portal, my external experience is a little bit more simplified, and then I publish those changes. I need to give it a name, so I type in here a name on that and then click publish. So once I've created that, now I'm going to navigate over to my app. So here I'm going to go find my vendor portal, and I'm going to click on the ... and choose to edit. This is going to open up the Portal Studio where I can create new pages. So I can see the components on the left-hand side, but I'm going to make a new page. And for this example, I choose the page with side navigation page template that I've created. I update the properties on the right-hand side, so I give it a new name that's more appropriate, and update the URL to represent the type of data that's on my page. And then I'm going to update some of that static text here. So you can see I'm just replacing the default text that was included there. And after I'm done updating this text, what I do next is I select that right pane and choose to insert a list. So in this case, I create that list, and on the right-hand side, again, I give it a name. And using the drop-down box for the entity, I'll scroll down and find my vendor bank accounts list that is created in the Common Data Service. Then I'll need to select which view I want to use. If you make multiple views, you can pick any of those views that are created on the Common Data Service, and I want to create a new record. However, at this point, I haven't created a web page yet for the form. So we're going to kind of save our changes here, and you can see there's some additional settings that I can control here. So I'm going to save my changes, and we're going to create another new page that is for the details for the form that you just saw me create. So in this case, I create a blank page, give my page a name, update that URL again, and then on my column, I'm going to insert a form. So in this case, I give it a name again, and using the drop-down box, I'm going to choose the entity. So it's the same entity, the bank account or vendor bank account details. And the form that I want is the new form that you just saw me create called bank account details form. I can then select what I want to have happen when they've successfully inserted. And I say I want to redirect. So I want them to go back to the vendor bank account details page, the other page that I created, once they've successfully inserted a record. You've got those advanced settings again. So now that I've created this, I can go back to the previous page, web page that I created. So I use my site navigation on the left to go find that page. And if I click on the list that we created, if I enable the create new record, I can now choose the form that I just created called bank account details. I could repeat that process for viewing, editing, and deleting as well, and control the settings of that. So once you save your changes, you can now go browse your website. And here you can see that page. If I open up the create, there's the form that I created and that behavior. And obviously, if I can insert records and so on, in my case, I set it to the defaults of only showing 10 records per page. But as soon as records are created in here, and you might remember in the previous session, we configured dual write for this particular entity. So as soon as this is updated in my portal, that data would be written right back to finance and operations. All right. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Vasavi, who's going to talk a little bit about some of our do's and don'ts for Power Apps portals.
Sure, Rachel. Thank you. Yeah, so again, moving on to some of the do's and don'ts. Rachel, can you move to the next slide, please?
Yep, sorry about that.
No worries. Thank you. Yeah, so some of the do's, right? Like defining security for your application is very important. You should definitely go in and create the necessary security roles to be able to share your app with internal users, as well as creating the necessary web roles in case you want to share your portal with external users. And the next one, right? Like leverage managed solutions and try avoid using unmanaged solutions or going with a no solution. So for some of these do's and don'ts, you see links embedded in here. So go read up more about managed solutions and why they are important using the link in here. And again, in case you have not come across the portal checker, definitely use the portal checker to check for any issues itself on the portal. This is similar to app checker that you see for a Canvas app, in a Power Apps Canvas app. And there are several troubleshooting documentations and frequently asked questions for portals. You can find them through the documentation page, and we can add them into the deck here. So leverage some of those additional help from the documentation pages. And for any external facing data, create all the necessary web roles, provide the right entity permissions, and the right access to the web pages that you create inside portals. Okay, and then based on your business needs, go configure the authentication that is most suitable for your business needs, right? You have a list of options like we mentioned before, so pick from that list and whatever suits best for you. And whenever you're creating a portal, start building your portal from a template if possible, if that template meets your needs. Otherwise, you can go with a blank portal and add in components as you need it. Coming to the don'ts, unless there is a need, a business need, try not to use URL for portals. And then in case you plan to, definitely don't give open access to, everyone for all the pages and entities that you have within your portal. And if you plan to opt in for any early updates from the product team on portals, do it in your development environments. Don't do it on your production environments, as any new code changes on portals can possibly mess up with your production portal that's published. So take a note of some of the do's and don'ts, give importance to it, and review them, and build your portals and publish them accordingly. Moving on, we do have a checklist of items and some resources that we are providing here. So for these checklist of items, a lot of links are provided in line. We definitely recommend going back and exploring in detail. If you are interested in leveraging application lifecycle management, then go back and watch the application lifecycle management tech talk in order to understand how ALM can be applied to portals. Leverage some of the Microsoft Learning Path documentation on getting started with Power Apps portals. The links are in here. In order to build and publish your portal, you can procure the right licenses for your end users. So definitely go back and say you're building a portal and you want your end users to use it. Procure the right licenses needed, and in order to enable the end users to start using your portals. Try creating your portals within a solution, and then you can deploy using a portal template or start from blank. Follow the links in here. And you can enable virtual entities and configure dual write for your data, say from finance and operations as required. You can create tables, views, forms from your tables and common data service, and all the views and forms you can create them from the Maker portal and common data service. And also along with that, you can add entity lists and entity forms onto portals in order to interact with the common data service data as needed, along with the data that you bring in from FNO. So once you have your portal built, definitely test your portal that's created. Don't miss configuring security for both your internal and external users using the Power Apps portal. Define a cutover strategy, say with a series of steps to ensure successful deployment of your portal into your production environments, right? So see like how you take your portal that you build it in a development environment, and what are some of the series of steps that you want to ensure and check them off before deploying that portal into a production environment. So yeah, definitely this is like your baseline checklist anytime you plan to build a Power Apps portal for your use case. So go over these, ensure that you're following some of the steps listed here, as well as the do's and don'ts in the previous screen, following all the necessary steps, and you should be good to have your portal in your production environment. And moving on, if you are new to Power Apps and the Power Platform, you can go to the Microsoft documentation website, and you can start learning. So the documentation does provide structured step-by-step guidance and some extensive learning material, starting from some of like the basic concepts to some advanced topics. So leverage, we have some links in here to get started with Power Apps. So definitely refer to them. And you can get started with Power Apps for free using some of the links in this. A lot of quick steps for you to get started, attend some app in a day sessions. There are a lot of guided learnings and so on. Also, you can leverage partner expertise. You can search for partner consulting services on AppSource. The links are provided in here, or you can sign up to attend a partner-led app in a day events. Again, the links are mentioned on this particular screen here. Yep. Also, moving on, you can join our community using the link in here, ask questions and engage with the team. You can connect with some of the local Power Apps user groups. You can also go attend Power Platform Summits. All the links that are provided in here. Feel free to leverage them and connect with our community. All the Microsoft documentation available is a lot of documentation is available for Power Platform for all the specific topics, including Apps Automate, BI, Power Virtual Agents, about how to go create your first app, or there are a bunch of training labs. So feel free to use all of the links provided in here. And there are a lot of resources on the next slide as well for administration and governance, how to adopt and provide guidance for Power Platform. So you have like the COE starter kit, some white paper for administration, and a lot of learning resources. And in case you want to get started with Power BI, and again, we have more links for the community forum here as well. So with that, we have about 7 minutes left, and we'll open it up to some Q&A.
Yes, and we do have a number of questions that have come in. So the first question that we have was, is the employee portal template based on virtual entities or dual write? And the answer to that is simple. It's actually not based on either. It's the employee portal template that is available out there is strictly built on common data service entities out of the box. It doesn't actually have any integration with F&O. So you'd have to extend that and build it yourself. And your approach for what you're extending, you're going to want to choose for each entity which approach is more appropriate, if the virtual entity approach is more appropriate or the dual write. And that actually, I think, leads us really well into the next question. We've had a few questions come in around this. Is about the kind of do's and don'ts. Two questions there. So the customer portal template for SCM is built on dual write, which violates the recommendation that dual write only be used if data is needed in both CE and F&O. So I want to maybe rephrase this a little bit. The recommendation to not use dual write is if it's not needed by the business logic. So the supply chain management portal that is provided out of the box, that customer portal, is built and it is reliant on some of that customer engagement functionality, and thus the requirement for dual write. I think the point that we're trying to make is dual write actually duplicates data into the the other application, which means you've got the data in F&O and you also have that data in your common data service. And I think the point that we're trying to get across is if you don't need the data for business logic that's happening in the other application in the CDS or in the common, your CE applications, for example, the best practice would to be not to use dual write and instead look to using virtual entities. So hopefully that helps clarify. I know we had a couple of questions around that. But I think the goal there is you only want to duplicate the data if both applications need the data for the business logic. And in the case of the customer portal template that's provided with supply chain management, it is actually relying on that business logic, which is why the reliance on dual write. Now, you could extend that and switch the portal to use virtual entities if you don't want any of that functionality or business logic that comes from the customer engagement side of it. It might be a little bit of an overhaul, if you will, to do that, to switch all those entities from dual write entities to virtual entities, but that could technically be done. So hopefully that answers the question. If not, feel free to kind of respond back in and we'll try to clarify that a little bit more. The next question that we had come in is about how do you move the changes to test or other environments? And that's a great question. And that really comes to the use of solutions. So a couple things to note about your portals is that there's kind of two parts to this. There's anything that you're extending. So if you're making new entities, views, forms, etc., and the design of your pages is all part of your solution. So one of our recommendations was to use managed solutions. And so the basic process is that you're going to export that solution and, from one environment and move it into another environment. There is a whole host of build automation functionality available as well. And I'd encourage you to check out that application lifecycle management TechTalk. That was the very first link in our checklist, which has all the details about how to set up and do build automation and just in general solution management and all the components of application lifecycle management. The other kind of half of that, just so you're aware, is the data portion of it. So part of what you're configuring oftentimes in the portal is done in the model-driven app, which is actually part of the database. So the database also has to be moved. Any of that kind of back office configuration that you do in portal management, and that's actually part of the common data service itself. Again, check out that application lifecycle management TechTalk, and they'll walk through kind of the steps in more details. There's also some great content in the links that we provided as well, the last slide from an administration standpoint. So hopefully that answers the question and points you to some of the resources that have some of those exact step-by-steps. Okay, so a question came in the list of entities when building the portal, does it only allow CDS entities? Will I be able to make a customized entity created in F&O? Great question. So when you're creating the portal is built off of the common data service. So yes, the entity has to be part of the common data service itself. However, if you want to make a custom entity in finance and operations, you can absolutely do that. And then you have two choices. You can either create a native entity in the common data service as well that matches that entity and configure dual write so that the data is copied, or you can use a virtual entity. When you're deciding between the virtual entity or the dual write, you'll want to consider if you'll have business logic directly in the portal or on the CDS side. If you're going to have business logic on the common data service, if you need to validate something like on the portal or do some extra business logic or code that relies on that data, then that's when you want to use dual write instead of a virtual entity. If you only need the business logic that exists inside of finance and operations, and you're just doing basic CRUD operations, then the virtual entity is a good choice. So hopefully that answers the question. Again, if not, feel free to submit another one and we'll try to get that answered. Okay, so 2 more questions and then we're going to wrap it up. In the customer portal order entry, is it possible to display product images when creating order lines? Yes, absolutely. I don't think the default portal has product images in it by default, but you would not be able to use like a basic entity form or an entity list to do that. That's where you're going to need a web form, which Vasavi kind of talked a little bit about that. So the links on that page when Vasavi was talking about web forms is what you would need to do. You'd also need to obviously make sure that the entity that stores those images is available, and you would be able to surface those images dynamically into the portal. You just need to kind of design your own web page to do that. And then the last question before we wrap it up, if I created customized fields in F&O sales order lines, for example, a margin field, discount reasons, notes, will I be able to enter into those fields via customer portal order entry lines? Yes, theoretically. So again, if you're using a virtual entity and you've surfaced those, you can perform basic CRUD operations. If there's business logic behind those that needs to execute, then you know, you might need to instead use dual write. So you'd have to add those fields to the entity in CDS. So create the entity and add those additional fields in the CDS and dual write that, and then build your business logic in the portal or on the CDS directly. All right, we're 1 minute over, so I'm going to wrap it up and hand it back over to Evan to talk a little bit about our survey. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rachel. As you mentioned, I've posted a link to a short survey in the Q&A panel. We'd like your feedback on today's session and hear what you'd like to see in future sessions. That survey scores on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest score possible, and we thank you for your participation in that. As a reminder, the recording of today's session will be available on the TechTalk's Community Dynamics page within 5 business days. I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenters and a big thank you to our audience for logging in and joining us today. Please stay safe and have a great rest of your day or evening wherever you are. Goodbye.